Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I just wanted to make a very short video about some observations that I've had regarding the Davison chart and its solar return. So I'm not going to explain a lot of concepts here. I'm not going to spend time explaining what the Davison chart is or the solar return. I really just kind of wanted to jump into it. Just to introduce myself, I've been studying astrology since 2015, and I've spent my time in both the Western and Eastern tradition. That is, I started in the Western tradition, and I started in a very elementary kind of way, looking at Placidus, looking at sort of just basic aspects. And over the years, I've developed my methodology, and I have found myself studying Jyotish. Now, I'm not going to be looking at any Jyotish techniques here, but I just wanted to tell you about myself. At the same time, the leg that I have in the world of Western astrology deals largely with relationship astrologies, not just romantic, but also familial. I really love studying the Davison chart, and I love studying the composite too, but most of all, I'm really interested in progressions and transits that happen to the Davison chart, things like the progressed composite, the progressed Davison, planetary transits, and solar arcs. I find them really, really interesting, and I love pinpointing the year and even the month that a particular couple will meet, will get engaged, will get married. So this is the first video in a series I'm going to make about some observations that I've had regarding the solar return of couples the year that they get married. Now, I do want to preface this by saying I'm not like a level 10 astrologer. I'm not a professional astrologer. This is just a hobby of mine. So there are a lot of things that I'm going to look at that are a bit novel, that are a bit outside the boundaries of typical practice. They may not even be consistent across all the data and all the research. It's just what I've noticed regarding the particular composite in Davison's that I have looked at. So these are singular cases. They may not be the case with any other composite or Davison. I just think it's interesting, and I just wanted to make this video because I thought maybe other people would think it's interesting, and that they might find these charts very curious. So that's what I'm going to say on that. Again, just a reminder, if you take this and you apply it to your own Davison and composite, it may not stand as true or relevant, but I think it's worth putting these ideas out there anyway, because I haven't seen much said about them, and maybe that's because people aren't interested, maybe because it's not a real phenomenon. But hey, I think it's cool to just let people know what I'm thinking. So here we have the Davison chart of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and this is for this is their solar return, the year that they got married. So they got married in May 2018. Their Davison birthday is February, and so this would have happened in their 2018 solar return chart. And this is by the way, this is the sidereal version of the solar return. I'm going to go through all the different variations, the regular kind of Western one, the sidereal one, and then I'm also going to overlay the solar return on the natal chart, but on the natal chart of the Davison. But for now, I'm just looking at the solar return sidereal. And by the way, if you're wondering how to get there, here I have it written up on astro.com, and you just go to sidereal here, and this is the Ayanamsha, the Fagan / Bradley. Okay, and I do equal chart, by the way. Okay, so this is the year they got married, and the first thing I have found that's been pretty consistent is that when a couple gets married, their solar return Davison, in one way or another, has two fundamental planets at play, and that is Jupiter and that is Pluto. Now again, remember, I'm mostly a sidereal astrologer, and Jupiter represents the husband in a woman's chart, but Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and you might wonder what the relevance of that is, but it means that Jupiter is exalted when it is functioning as a family man. At least that's how I understand it in that singular regard. That is one way we can interpret that. So when Jupiter assumes the seventh house in a solar return chart, right? Remember, Jupiter is expansion. What is growing here? The relationship is growing to kind of the highest pinnacle it can grow, right? A marriage. The relationship is growing. It is developing. Jupiter is development, right? Now you might say, well, what about Mars and Saturn? Because they also kind of rule time, but because Jupiter kind of grows things, I also look at it as a kind of as a forward moving gesture as well, right? It may not represent time, but it represents enlargement, right? And that's a kind of development, something going from something small to something big. So development of the relationship, and that's why we see Jupiter here in the seventh house the year that they get married, right? Now, what else do we notice here? We have Pluto on the MC, and this is a pattern that I've noticed where Pluto in the solar return Davison of people who get married, the solar return, you have Pluto either on the MC or looking at the MC, right? And in Vedic astrology, the opposition is synonymous with the conjunction. They're doing the same thing, right? It's there's a little bit of tension, but not in the way that Western astrology emphasizes it. So a lot of the times when I'm talking about the opposition, I'm also looking at it from the perspective of the conjunction, and I'm marrying those two things. So what is the MC? The MC in the Davison is the public facing status of the couple, right? It's a very I view it as a very performative, very detached place in the Davison. And that is because of its relation to the IC, right? The most intimate point in the Davison, I believe, right? The IC is home. The IC is the closed door, right? These are ruled by Cancer and Capricorn naturally, right? Cancer is the home. And Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, well, in Vedic astrology, Saturn is the public, right? And so the MC is the public. It's literally not you. It's quite literally not you. In the same way the seventh house is not in certain through certain perspective, the seventh house is not you, right? It's the partner, it's also the public, it's people that you do business with. But I digress, right? So the MC is not you. The MC is the status, I think of the relationship in the solar return, right? I'm not talking about the natal Davis, I'm talking about the solar return. So Pluto's transformation. So when Pluto is on the MC, the status of the relationship is transforming, right? And we see marriage precipitating here. Some kind of change is happening, right? And of course, what that change is depends on the aspects that are being made and the association of the lords of each house and the place that they hold in the chart, right? So you might notice that the first house lord, Mars, is in the eighth house. And if you don't know astrology that well, you might think, well, eighth house, well, that's transformation, that's ending, right? The relationship could be ending, but not necessarily, right? If you look at Mars, it's receiving some very positive aspects, and in that way, it's suggesting a far more progressive transformation, right? Mars is action. They are doing something to change the status of the relationship, right? And what else is the eighth house, right? The eighth house is other people's money, right? It's when you, as an individual, mingle with other people's money. And so if the ascendant of the Davison is the couple, it's both of you together, you two people are mingling what you have. You're taking what you have, and the other person is taking what they have, and you're putting it together, right? You're investing in each other. So that's another interpretation that's going on here. We also have Juno in conjunction to the sun, And I'm going to look at the sun with a bit more detail when I switch to the western as opposed to the sidereal. But right now, Juno, for me, Juno, for me, literally just represents marriage. A lot of people don't really look at it, but in my experience, I found that Juno, when relationships are formed or when a couple gets married, actually does play a considerable part, right? And we have a 5 degree difference here, and I kind of allow that. And the sun is the identity, right? It's the soul. Sun is soul, so this is the soul of the relationship. So what's happening to it? Well, Juno, they're getting married. Now I've also noticed sometimes that when the solar return is overlaid on the natal Davison, sometimes one of the signals is that is when Jupiter conjuncts Juno, or when there's like a relationship with Jupiter and Juno, a conjunction, an opposition, something like that. That's also a very important signal to look at. Now, at this point, with that being said, I'm going to move to the Western chart. So I'm just going to select tropical. We're going to look at the same thing, and we're going to notice a bunch of planets moved around. And here again, we see that the MC is now opposite Pluto. And so remember what I said, that I view the opposition and the conjunction as very similar. So again, we see the relationship transforming. And this is just to help out people who don't really look at the sidereal and are more partial to this. So that's happening again, right? The sun is with Juno again, but now we have Uranus in the 7th house, and this is kind of an interesting thing that I've noticed. Now we can say that from the Western perspective, Uranus rules the 11th house, right? And what is the 11th house? Well, it's fame, it's your hopes, your wishes, it's people, it's the public, right? And I do think that, but I don't look at Uranus like that. For me, Uranus, not in this case, but generally Uranus for me is like a timing thing, right? So sometimes, I think of like a synastry chart that has Uranus conjunct Venus, right? The timing in terms of attraction will be brought down a lot. That's kind of like it can be like a very instant connection. And I don't have an answer to this, to be honest. I don't know why, but I keep seeing Uranus in the 7th house in solar return Davison charts when the year the couple gets married or meets. I see it often. I don't know why. If you know why, please tell me. I mean, maybe in this case, it's because we have the 5th lord in the 7th house, right? And that's like that's love to marriage, right? Uranus is timing, maybe, right? Maybe that's what that is. But I've also seen charts where Uranus, doesn't rule the 5th. Uranus isn't the 5th lord, and it's in the 7th house. It's interesting. It's very curious. I don't know why that's there, but it's worth noting. Now we also have Jupiter opposite the vertex. This is just a kind of note to you guys. I don't view the vertex as anything but a timing asteroid, or a timing not an asteroid, like a timing apex. Right? To me, it's about timing. It's not about soulmates. It's not about twin flames. It's just about timing, right? So sometimes when a couple meets, you look at their solar return Davison, and you'll see in the overlay particularly, you'll see a really important planet conjunct the vertex, and I'm actually going to show you that right now. So I'm just going to go to natal plus solar return, and I think it's in the Western one, if I'm right. Right. Okay, so the year they got married, right? We have the ascendant on the vertex. We have the vertex on the ascendant, right? We have this double whammy going on. We have the MC on the moon. And this brings me to my next point, that oftentimes what I've noticed is that the AC and the MC will hit really, really critical points in the overlay. and then the descendant and the ascendant will also be hit by really important planets. So again, Jupiter, right? Jupiter is really, really critical. I see in my analysis, right? I see Jupiter in the seventh house a lot, like 90%, 90%, right? 90% of like a small survey isn't actually a lot. So I might be partial in that regard, but I see Jupiter on the descendant a lot in couples that get married in their solar returns. So that's what I have to say about that. Now I'm just going to look at where the ascendant goes in the sidereal. So again, we have Jupiter here, we have Destin here, and Destin, I kind of take that asteroid with a grain of salt, right? Because you don't want to rely on one asteroid to tell you what's going to happen. You want to rely on a pattern, and that pattern is going to tell you, you know, what's going to happen. Now, the marriage isn't that obvious in the sidereal overlay, but I just think it's worth noting that, again, this is kind of an experimental thing I've noticed. If you see something here that I don't, of course the Jupiter's there, right? You know, you have the MC with, but right, that was always there. It's kind of near the MC. The AC is kind of near the AC. If you see something that I don't, please let me know. This is also something I wanted to say actually, and this brings me back to the year they met. So I'm going to go back to their 2016 solar return, because it's here where, you know, we're able to see kind of what brought them together. And it brings me to a next really important point. When you overlay the solar return on the natal chart and you see the ascendant and the midheaven conjunct, that's a really, really, really important year. That is really critical, and you must take note of that. Especially, you know, even in your own solar return. So we have that happening here, and that kind of signals to us that, okay, maybe this is a year where, you know, if they were meant to meet, they meet. You know, Liz Green tells us that, you know, a composite chart, progressed composite, it's not going to tell you whether two people are meant to meet. But if you are in, you know, if you are in a relationship, it's worth going back and looking at your solar return chart and seeing what stands out to you, right? Did you have an alignment like this? Or maybe the AC was at the MC and the MC was at the AC, right? This is a really critical alignment that I like to see. Now, we also have Mars in the 7th house, and I've seen this a lot when people form a relationship in their solar returns, this overlay, or it might just even be in the solar return. I see this a lot, and I've interpreted as action, right? Your combined energy, your energy is coming together and it's combining in such a way that the action of the relationship, but you're both pursuing the relationship, the action is going towards pursuit. And Mars is exalted in Scorpio, and the aspects that it's getting are pretty positive. They're not like backbreaking, you know. And so I'm going to look at the regular solar return in a second to kind of demonstrate the difficulty, but for now that's all you need to know. You also have Saturn in the 7th house, and it's not really conjunct. I mean, it's close to this. Let's see, what's Saturn at here? Saturn is at 15 degrees. Okay, so it's kind of close to the natal planets in the 7th house. So, you know, it is kind of demonstrating if a relationship is happening, and it is, that there is some sort of stability there. And you also have the kind of a vertex return happening here. The vertex is conjunct to the vertex. You have a Mercury return. That's not really that special. Mercury moves pretty fast. It's always close together with the Sun and with Venus, so it happens. You're going to see that a lot, but that's what I want to bring your attention to here, just this particular overlay. Now I'm going to look at the overlay in sidereal, and we're going to see the differences here. So again, we have Mars and we have Saturn. Here the AC goes into the 5th house, and the Lord is conjunct the Lord. It's making a return. The MC goes into the 3rd house, and that is also ruled by Mercury. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the regular solar return. We're going to go to tropical. So again, this is the year they met. The moon is conjunct the North Node and Jupiter. right? And so how do we interpret that? The feelings are growing is what I would say. The feelings are growing, they're developing. Then we go to the sidereal. And again, see, you have this Uranus here. Now in this case, I've interpreted this from some research. I've interpreted this as distance because they were long distance in the first year of their relationship. It was kind of a touch and go thing. They had to travel to each other. So there's a kind of disconnect. The energies are coming together and it's producing a physical distance. And it's funny that it's in Pisces, right? Because Pisces is the natural 12th house, right? And it rules foreign lands. Pisces also rules water, right? So crossing oceans and things like that. We also, again, we have Pluto looking at the midheaven again, right? And Pluto is in a wide conjunction with Venus, and you always want to look at Venus in the solar return because it's going to tell you about the love activity, right? Venus, Moon. Here we have Moon in the 12th house. The feelings are growing in private, right? And then the Lord of the first house, the actual relationship itself, is in the 5th house of romance. Right? The identity of the relationship, the sun, is in the 5th house, and it's in Aquarius, right? The 5th Lord is in the 7th. It's in Aquarius. And again, that shows distance, but it's also conjunct Neptune. So that's also something interesting because, again, Neptune in Western rules Pisces. So again, you have this sort of like exchange going on, not really exchange, but you have the 7th Lord in the 5th house and the 5th Lord in the 7th house. Oh, actually, I don't think that's not the 5th Lord because Saturn is the 5th Lord. So scrap that. But you do have the 7th Lord in the 5th house, and it's conjunct the actual relationship. It's conjunct the people, right? Their souls coming together. So a lot of idealism, a lot of sacrifice, maybe we can say that. But also, again, Neptune rules Pisces. That's water, right? That's crossing oceans. It can be, right? And we only get to that through a detailed look at kind of the full picture. But I think, there's room to argue that even that sort of suggestion is a bit of a stretch, right? So that's that. And now I bring up the year that they met to kind of point out that there are a few main signals that tell us what's going on, but it is kind of a hit or miss, right? In order to really get the full picture, we have to look at their natals, but we also have to look at the progressed composite. So here's their progressed composite, Meghan Markle, Prince Harry. And I have not set this to sidereal. I have set this to Western. I read my progressed my progressed charts, including the progressed composite, from the Western perspective. And you always want to look at the moon first. The outer planets are basically irrelevant. I look at the moon. I look at the angles. I look at where are the angles in comparison to the composite, the natal composite. So, is there anything in their chart that's at 25 degrees Taurus, And that'll tell us that maybe there's some action, or maybe the MC is that, maybe the MC is, the progressed MC is conjunct a planet in the natal composite, right? But right now, we're just to keep it simple, we're gonna look at the moon. And the moon, remember I said, I kind of take asteroids with a grain of salt, but the moon, you'll notice, is conjunct Juno, right? And this is around the time, we don't know the date that they met, but early July, they said. So I just put July 4th. The moon is conjunct Juno. It just passed Juno. So that's interesting, right? There's something going on there. And you'll notice that the moon is in a place where there are a sequence of planets. The moon's, in a couple months, the moon's going to hit Mercury, and then it's going to hit Mars, and then it's going to hit Pluto, and then it's going to hit Saturn, and then it's going to hit Venus, and then the vertex, and then, Union, and then Jupiter, right? And then it's going to hit the descendant. So there's a lot of action to be had here. And I've noticed this with some couples where when you look at their progressed composite, the moon is when when they meet, the progressed moon is in a position where it has a lot to look forward to in terms of what is going to happen. So that's just interesting to note. Now, which one is this? Okay, so this is the this is the composite, the progressed composite. Now I've progressed the Davison, right? And I've overlaid the Davison. Actually, let me just look at the regular progression. So first thing we look at the ascendant. The ascendant does move, and here the ascendant has moved to conjunct the north node. That's a pretty big deal. That's pretty, in my opinion, that's pretty important, right? The north node, by the way, is kind of one of those outer points that really doesn't move. So you want to look at what is hitting the north node, not what the north node is hitting. Okay, so I mean, now we look at the moon, right? It's at 23 degrees, and yeah, it's close to Pluto, and yeah, I mean, you know, it's coming to oppose Mars. That's pretty important, Moon-Mars connections. But I like to look at conjunctions. I find them to be the most powerful in progression. So we don't really see anything here. Well, let's look at the progressed overlaid the natal. Aha. Moon conjunct the vertex. The vertex is at 2324. The moon is at 2321. That's pretty significant. Now the MC. The MC is at 2 degrees. It's approaching the sun at 5 degrees. That's just interesting to note for me, right? And the AC is at 20. The ascendant is at 28 degrees, and it's approaching the natal north node at 2 degrees in Cancer. So the next sign. That's kind of interesting, right? To see these overlays. It's kind of putting a picture together. The MC is so close to the sun. The AC is so close to the north node. So again, we're seeing this effect of having a sort of cascade of events that happen here as well. So let's fast forward then to 2018. I believe it was like May. I'm not sure. It was around May 20th maybe. Where is the moon now? The moon has hit the vertex. Right? Where's the MC? The MC is a degree away from the sun. The ascendant has hit 2 degrees. Sorry, the ascendant has hit 0 degrees, so it's finally in Cancer. It's now 2 degrees away from the north node. Kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. Now if we fast forward here, let's do about the 20th again. Oh, 20th. The moon is at 6 degrees Scorpio. So we want to keep that in mind. 6 degrees Scorpio. Let's see where it's at in the regular composite chart. 6 degrees Scorpio. It's at Union. It's at Union. Union is in the 7th house. Kind of interesting, right? Now we haven't looked at if the AC or the MC lines anywhere, and we can do that now by looking at the progressed composite chart with the progressed natals. Okay, so here's their progressed natals and the progressed composite chart in the middle. Okay, so this is kind of like a comparison thing I like to do. I like to see if there are any connections going on here. And again, this is sort of just an experimental thing, but it's fun to look. So her ascendant is at 24 degrees Leo. Nothing here. It's a bit far. His moon is a bit far from it's 10 degrees away, so that doesn't really count. Okay, her MC is at 20 degrees Taurus. 20 degrees Taurus, right? So it's opposite these at a reasonable, it's opposite, all these planets in the 6th house at a reasonable degree. What was it again? 20 degrees Taurus. Yeah. It's reasonably opposite these. It's approaching his north node, right? Maybe it hit it when they had a child or something. That could be possible. I'm not sure. So now her moon is at 29 degrees Capricorn. Again, nothing really going on in his. 29 Capricorn. Aha. Her moon conjunct the natal south node, opposite this north node. His moon, 14 degrees Leo. Nothing going on. MC, 19 degrees Sagittarius. 19 degrees Sag. Yeah, nothing going on there. Did I look at his MC? Yeah, I did. His moon. Yeah, I don't see, again, it's a bit of a hit or miss. Maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe you guys can let me know. 4 degrees Pisces. So his ascendant is close to that MC, right? That's kind of interesting. This moon is at 7 degrees Scorpio. Yeah, it's close to these, I guess. But there's not that, it's not that compelling, to be honest with you. So that kind of just goes to show again that this is pretty experimental, and you're not going to see connections across the board, which sort of just, again, reinforces Liz Green's idea that a composite will not tell you if two people are meant to meet, but certainly you can find connections when they do meet that lets you know, if something will precipitate and how things are going to go. So 25 degrees Taurus. This is when they met. 25 degrees Taurus. Approaching that, right? 25 degrees Taurus. Reasonable. 2 degrees Pisces. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. 2 degrees Pisces. So again, there could be connections here, but it's not that significant. Really, what I want to hone in on here is a kind of composite technique where you bring everything together. You look at the solar return. You look at the progressions. You look at everything, right? And I haven't looked at their natals, but you look at their natals as well. And then a really interesting thing that you can also do is you can look at the natal solar return in a synastry relation with the Davison solar return. But so that's again, that's kind of an experimental thing. But another thing you can do is you can look at the natal and the solar arc direction. So this is when they met, and solar arcs have to be really, really specific, right? Oh, sorry, this is when they got married. Let's do when they met. They have to be like a degree or something, like there needs to be a lot of proximity with these planets. And I don't know if we really get that here. The ascendant is at 25 degrees, so it's not really hitting anything at 0 degrees. The sun is at 8, union is at 9. The MC is at 2, the sun is at 5. Right, so the connections aren't that strong. The moon is at 29, so and Eros is at 28, opposite. So again, this is a bit of a hit or miss, and once again, it just kind of proves that you can't predict if someone's going to meet, but you can certainly, if they have met, you can certainly see where things might go. So you flash forward to May when they get married. Okay, so here we have the MC at 4 degrees 33, approaching the sun a bit closer, right? The sun is at 26. Nothing really going on there, right? I don't really see anything else, to be honest, but it's kind of interesting to see the sun is at 10 degrees now. So the sun is past union, right? The sun may have been conjunct union when they got engaged or something like that, right? I don't know the full details. Again, this is strictly experimental, but kind of cool to know. It's kind of cool to see. So that being said, just to kind of bring this back home again. Here we have the solar return chart of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, the year they got married. And you'll notice again that Pluto's at the MC. You'll notice Saturn in the fifth house. In the seventh house. Sorry, you'll notice Mars there. It's interesting, right? The moon with Uranus in the south node in the 12th. The moon with Uranus, right? So they got married. Oh, by the way, Juno is also opposite the MC, so kind of conjunct, right? The moon with Uranus, so a kind of come as you are, eclectic, welcoming energy. The moon is also spontaneous. The moon is mother. The moon is in the 12th house. It's isolated. It's interesting, right? The 10th lord is in the 7th. The 4th lord is in the 12th. It's conjunct the south node, which is the past. They got married and by them, kind of just them and their family in an isolated villa after a long time of being together. It's curious. It's a curious kind of conjunction there. You have the vertex conjunct Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of the 6th, which is, it can be law, right? It can be I view the 6th house as legal issues, right? The 7th house is the lawyer, but the 6th house is the actual issue. So, and Virgo to me is documents. You have Jupiter exalted in Cancer in the 4th house of family. So now let's look at the tropical. That was the sidereal. Venus is conjunct the ascendant. Again, you have this relationship between Mars and Saturn, and it's getting closer together. You have Pluto in the 5th house. You have vertex opposite Juno, right, by 1 degree. What was the 7th house energy of Mars and Saturn is now looking at the status, right, the MC, and it's by 1 degree. So that status is ramping up, right? That there's energy being put towards outside identity. Now we'll do the overlay. Okay, you have moon. Again, this important moon-Uranus thing, right? The moon is exactly conjunct the descendant. You have Pluto looking at the MC. You have the 6th house, this formalization, right? The Mercury conjunct the ascendant. Mercury is at 11 degrees. It's conjunct that Jupiter. It's conjunct the ascendant. The North Node is in the 1st house. The Sun will always return to its kind of regular place, but the ascendant is conjunct the moon. So the progressed ascendant, the solar return ascendant, is conjunct the moon, and then the moon is also in the 7th house. And so if you recall with the Meghan and Harry thing, again, they had this sort of vertex thing going on where vertex was conjunct vertex and then ascendant was conjunct vertex. So again, we have this like dual thing going on, this kind of common, this like duality, right? You have moon, ascendant, moon. You have Jupiter on top of Venus, expansion of the kind of the way they love. It's very interesting, right? That Venus is also on top of Moon, but it's interesting. You see this sort of North Node Jupiter, a lot of like expansion difference. That Juno is approaching the MC as well. Now I'm not sure if we looked at it from the sidereal perspective. I don't think we did. We didn't do that. So here we have the vertex, which is at 18 degrees, and it's conjunct exactly the first house Mercury. Now at this point, planets in the first house come to represent the partners. So that's really important to take note of, right? When something hits planets in the first house. And there's that vertex. And then you have the south node, which is at 24 degrees. So it's 4 degrees away from this vertex. The moon is at 21 degrees, so that's a bit too far. But again, you have the south node hitting this vertex. And I think that was always the case, but I digress. Then again, you have this Pluto looking at the MC. So again, you have 4 different versions of this solar return. And in all 4 versions, you have this reinforced Pluto MC. Now, I do know that all 4 versions are different ways of saying the same thing. But when you start to see patterns, you're being told that those patterns are emphasized that year. It's the same thing that comes up when people talk about the difference between the Davison and the composite. They say, well, this is showing up in the Davison, but it's not showing up in the composite. Well, it means that it's there, but it doesn't have the same force it would if it were to show up twice, right? So if you have like Uranus conjunct Moon in the Davison, and then you have Uranus opposite Moon in the composite, well, it's telling you that that's a theme, right? But if it only happens in one, well, maybe it has a bit more flexibility. At the same time, the Davison is something that you use for timing, so you also use it for timing in a way that you don't really with the composite, right? You can't do a composite solar return, you have to do a Davison solar return. So the Davison itself carries a different weight. So there's always going to be a relativity going on there, but the fact is that when things repeat, it's kind of screaming in your face and saying, notice this is happening. So this Pluto MC keeps happening. This sort of vertex relationship keeps happening. And so does this sort of Mercury thing going on. And it was the same thing with Meghan and Harry, where we saw these patterns. So with that being said, it might be useful to look at their progressed chart, and I think they got married in August. Let's do that to tropical, natal, and progressed. Okay, what do we notice? First, let's look at the moon. The moon is approaching Saturn, right? Not only is so that's kind of a formalization of the relationship. And again, I kind of give like a 1, maybe 2 degree difference when it comes to progressions. I don't do that with solar arcs, but progressions, I've found enough reason to give them a little bit of breathing room when it comes to the moon. Not really when it comes to the ascendant or the midheaven, but I digress. So, again, we don't really look at outer planets. Venus is at 9:52, so it's coming to conjunct Jupiter, right? That's all I'm sort of noticing here. What's this Juno at? 10 degrees? Okay. But that moon is really important to take note of here. So with that said, I just wanted to kind of give you guys like a really short, actually, before we do that, I'm going to look at the solar arc direction. Okay, Venus, 29 degrees, right on Union. What's that moon at? 17 degrees. Right. MC. AC21. Okay, so maybe that Venus is what's showing Eros. That's what that Eros at. 22 degrees. I wouldn't really count that, but so that's that. Anyway, so now that we've looked at that, I just wanted to again make a short video about some really interesting things I've noticed in the solar return of Davison charts. And again, it might not be a universal phenomenon, but it is worth noting. And you can find patterns in your own solar returns and your own Davisons. And if you do, let me know in the comments. Thank you.